Okay, today I'd like to talk about MH370 and its disappearance off radar, where it is, and why anybody's still searching for it. Might as well just give up right now, because you ain't never even gonna find a piece of the wreckage, let alone an engine or anything else. Boeing knows exactly where those engines are. They monitor those engines every single minute that they're in the air. What happened with the MH370 disappearance is in conjunction with something that I witnessed along with another friend of mine 1 year prior to the vanishing of the MH370 over the Indian Ocean. What I'm telling you is, in 2012, during the summer, while walking my dog, my ex-girlfriend and I witnessed for 3 or 4 days this series of testing going on above the airspace in our town. And what they were doing, as crazy as this sounds, but you could hear them screaming for 3 or 4 days straight, so you couldn't mistake it for what they were doing once you started watching it. What they were doing was taking jets, flying them at a high altitude, and you could hear the engines rev up like they were doing a climb. Then they would start doing a dive. Then they would do a climb. Then they would do a dive. I thought for sure that one of these aircraft were going to drop out of the sky at any given moment, because they were doing this non-stop for hour after hour after hour. I don't know how many planes they had, but they had them circling in a giant circle where they would fly toward Lake Huron. When they would get within about 2 or 3 miles of it, all of a sudden you'd see the jet and hear it, and then you would see it disappear and not hear it. And then a few seconds later you would see the jet reappear about 3 or 4 miles over Lake Huron. And that jet would circle, and then the next one would come through the field. They would jump into counter space, which is the other dimension besides our space dimension, and then they would bring the jet back into visibility and audible. So what I'm saying is, for 3 or 4 days straight, I was watching what the military was doing, or what these defense contractors were doing over Rogers City, Michigan, over Lake Huron, for 3 or 4 days straight, the summer prior to MH370 vanishing. So, if anybody's still looking for parts, pieces, wreckages, passenger artifacts, the engines, Boeing knows where those engines are. They're not on the face of the planet. Counter space is, you can call it hyperspace, or you can call it the vortex vacuum of space, or you can call it 0 point, you can call it the ether. That's where they jumped it to, and they didn't bring it back. You will never find that plane anywhere on the face of this earth, period. So when this guy claims that he's discovered it and it's laying on the bottom of the ocean, it's not. The highest up in the government structure know exactly what happened to that plane. They jumped it to hyperspace or counter space, and you'll never see it, because they didn't turn the switch back on. They just left it off. They were testing this prior, like I said, 1 year before this. And I didn't put 2 and 2 together after this thing crashed until I was listening to somebody talk about what the sound from the engines, and how they were diving and climbing and diving and climbing. That's exactly the same thing that these full-size jets were doing before they would jump them into counter space and 2 or 3 miles further down where they were vectored out to, and then reappear them. We watched this time and time and time again. You could hear the jet screaming overhead, and then you wouldn't hear them. So there's no doubt in my mind what these idiots did with that jet. MH370 will never be found because it is not on the planet, period. Thank you.